Prince William went completely still. It wasn't an explosive outburst or a shouting match that echoed through the grand halls of Sandringham House. It was something far more unsettling, a sudden, chilling silence that people close to the Prince of Wales recognize as his most dangerous register. When William discovered that Queen Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, was standing on the grounds of the private 8,000-acre estate, he asked just one quiet, deadly question: who authorized this? And when the answer traced back not to his own team, but directly into King Charles's inner orbit, a fault line that has been cracking open inside the monarchy for years, officially shattered into the most raw, personal confrontation the royal family has witnessed in decades. Before we expose the explosive confrontation between William, Charles, and Camilla behind closed doors, welcome back to Crown Watch. If you want deep, unfiltered breakdowns of royal power moves and palace drama every single day, take a quick moment right now to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. Welcome to the inner circle. Now, let's unpack what really happened on that grey Norfolk morning. To understand why Tom Parker Bowles' presence on those grounds sparked such an immediate eruption, you have to understand what Sandringham actually represents to Prince William. This is not a tourist landmark or a line in an official royal biography. Sandringham House sits on 8,000 acres of private Norfolk countryside, owned by the royal family since 1862, when it was purchased for the Prince of Wales, who became King Edward VII. It has never been crown property, never been government administered, and never belonged to the public. It passes from monarch to monarch through personal inheritance. Queen Elizabeth inherited it from her father, King George VI, who loved it so completely that he called it the place he loved best in the world. She spent every single Christmas of her 70-year reign there. When Queen Elizabeth passed away in September 2022, Sandringham passed automatically to King Charles. When Charles eventually passes, it passes directly to William. And that inheritance chain defines William's entire mindset. William doesn't view Sandringham as some distant property he will inherit in an abstract future. He experiences it as a sanctuary he is already responsible for protecting. His private Christmas memories are Norfolk memories. It is where the family gathered away from cameras, protocol, and public performance. It is where the critical Sandringham summit took place in January 2020, when Harry and Meghan's departure forced the most intense internal royal negotiations in modern history. For William, Sandringham is a sacred family fortress where serious matters are handled without outside interference. For months, staff at Sandringham have noticed a heightened protectiveness from Prince William. He pays hyper-focused attention to who accesses the estate, asking direct questions whenever unfamiliar names appear in connection with the property. He possesses the sharp alertness of a man who understands that if boundaries are blurred in one sanctuary, the integrity of the entire institution collapses. And the underlying issue here was a massive, unchecked assumption, the assumption that proximity to King Charles creates automatic access to the private spaces Charles owns. It was the belief that being the Queen Consort's son carries an implicit permission that doesn't require authorization from anyone else. The fallout surrounding Balmoral should have destroyed that assumption permanently. Following reports of commercial access violations and elite-paying clients being offered unauthorized private tours of the late Queen's sanctuary, Princess Anne took immediate legal counsel, bypassing Charles entirely. William aligned with Anne instantly, supporting permanent, uncompromising access restrictions against non-working associates. That move sent a crystal-clear message to Tom Parker Bowles about where the boundaries lay. Tom understood that message, which makes his presence at Sandringham extraordinarily difficult to explain away as a harmless misunderstanding. The real explanation lies not in Tom Parker Bowles misreading William's stance, but in something that transpired between Tom and King Charles in the months following the Balmoral incident. King Charles allegedly offered Tom a level of personal reassurance about his access to Sandringham, an invitation given directly by Charles, without going through William's household, and without seeking William's consent. That gap between the access Tom believed he possessed through the king, and the access William was prepared to tolerate on an estate he will inherit, is precisely what caused the explosion. This was far from the first time William drew a sharp line regarding Camilla's family. The first major signal of William's approach to institutional power occurred quietly behind financial ledgers. Annabelle Elliot, Camilla's younger sister and a respected interior designer, had been on the Duchy of Cornwall payroll for nearly 2 decades under Charles, earning tens of thousands of pounds annually for design work across duchy properties. The moment William inherited the Duchy of Cornwall following Queen Elizabeth's death, Annabelle Elliot's name completely vanished from published financial accounts. No public announcement was made, and no explanation was offered. William simply acted, replacing her with his own trusted circle. The message required no elaboration. The duchy was his institution, and proximity to power would no longer flow through his father's wife. When William combined the Annabelle Elliot removal with his hardline support of Princess Anne during the Balmoral situation, a definitive pattern was set. William draws lines through decisive action rather than endless words. Once those lines are set, he does not negotiate or redraw them to accommodate hurt feelings. Yet King Charles has always maintained a genuine, personal warmth toward Camilla's children. This was never a performative gesture for marital harmony. Charles genuinely likes Tom Parker Bowles. He enjoys his company, respects his food writing and literary career, and shares common interests in culture and cuisine. That warmth developed across decades of private family life. But Charles never fully internalized William's position as a rigid boundary that applied to his own private properties. Charles experienced Sandringham as his personal home and refuge, where he believed he held the absolute right to invite his stepson whenever he pleased. When Tom Parker Bowles walked onto the Sandringham estate on that grey Norfolk morning, he arrived with a confidence built on years of warmth from the king. But the moment William's security detail made the radio call, the situation transformed into an immediate crisis. King Charles was not at Sandringham when the confrontation occurred. He was at Clarence House in London, managing his ongoing medical treatment schedule, when the urgent call came through from Queen Camilla. Persons familiar with the exchange describe Camilla's voice as carrying a volatile mix of fury and intense distress, the anguish of a mother whose son had just experienced a deeply humiliating confrontation, and the frustration of a wife whose husband's heir was actively dismantling her family's standing. Charles listened quietly. He offered empathy to his wife, acknowledged her distress, and promised he would speak directly to William. But the conversation that followed between Charles and William exposed the true power dynamic inside the modern palace more clearly than any event in recent history. When Charles called William, he found himself in an impossible position. Sandringham is currently owned by Charles legally. Whatever invitation Tom Parker Bowles had received originated from Charles himself. That meant William's anger was not merely directed at Tom, it was an explicit rejection of a decision Charles had made. For Charles to argue that William was out of line, he would have had to assert that his authority over his private property superseded William's vision for royal security and boundaries. While technically true on paper, it was practically meaningless in terms of where real authority inside the palace actually sits today. King Charles is 76 years old, navigating an active cancer diagnosis, and carrying the immense physical weight of the crown. While his dedication to duty is unquestioned, his capacity to exercise operational authority against Prince William's vision for the monarchy's future has diminished significantly. William controls the Duchy of Cornwall, holds expanded royal warrant authority, and effectively oversees the palace's long-term crisis management strategy alongside Princess Catherine and Princess Anne. When Charles raised the Sandringham incident with William, the conversation was brief and tense. William did not raise his voice to his father, but his position was expressed with cold, absolute finality. Sandringham may belong to Charles today, but its future management and the principles governing who accesses royal estates are not up for negotiation. William made it clear that guest invitations issued to Camilla's family would not override institutional boundaries. He was not asking for his father's agreement, he was stating an unshakable operational boundary. Charles did not argue back with fiery conviction. He expressed discomfort, noted that Sandringham was his private home, and spoke gently about the importance of family unity. William acknowledged his father's feelings, but maintained his stance without yielding an inch. The silence at the end of that call spoke louder than any argument. Charles did not order William to back down, nor did he promise Camilla that he could prevent such a confrontation from happening again. The exchange that followed between Charles and Camilla was described as one of the most difficult of their marriage. Camilla wanted Charles to draw a hard line against William and demand an apology for how her son was treated. But Charles could not give her that assurance. To do so would require him to believe that William was fundamentally wrong in protecting the institution, a belief Charles simply could not bring himself to hold. His inability to confront William delivered a devastating realization to Camilla. The protection her husband's reign provided for her family was rapidly evaporating. A week after the Sandringham confrontation, Tom Parker Bowles was photographed arriving at a high society literary event in London, smiling and completely composed for the cameras. To the outside world, nothing seemed amiss. Behind the scenes, the consequences of the Sandringham incident have proven far more severe than the restrictions that followed Balmoral. William's team has executed a fundamental reassessment of the entire framework through which Camilla's children access royal spaces. 2 separate access incidents across 2 private royal estates in a compressed time frame proved to William that property-specific warnings were insufficient. It required dismantling the core assumption that personal warmth from the king translates into institutional access. William has ensured through internal palace channels that casual visits from Camilla's extended family to duchy properties, Sandringham, Balmoral, or household-managed events are effectively closed. For Queen Camilla, the personal toll is profound. She spent 20 years patiently integrating her children into the orbit of the royal family. Watching that integration methodically dismantled, watching her son confronted on estate grounds, and watching her husband respond with helpless silence has forced a stark realization. She understands that when Charles's reign ends and the throne passes to William, Sandringham and Balmoral pass to a king who will enforce absolute boundaries. The institutional access she built across 2 decades will not survive the transition. The confrontation on that Norfolk morning was more than a private family argument. It was the moment the internal power shift inside the British monarchy became impossible to deny. Prince William has made it abundantly clear that the future of the crown will be lean, strictly controlled, and completely free of non-working royal adjacency. The lines have been drawn in stone, the doors have been locked, and the message echoing through the halls of Buckingham Palace is unmistakable. The modern era of the monarchy has officially begun.